So for this Inspired By song, I did a lot of listening to Thin Lizzy. If you're not familiar with their whole entire catalog, it is actually mind-blowing how diverse this band really is. I was so used to The Boys Are Back in Town and those types of songs, but I never did a deep dive into their catalog before. If there's 2 albums to listen to Nightlife and Johnny the Fox, just to see what a difference in type of music that they're making during those periods of time. And if you really want to get crazy, they actually have some great 80s tunes right before kind of the end of their career, where they actually had some really power pop metal stuff in line with the early 80s music with some great guitar shredding on it. But for this one, I kind of picked more of the 70s vibe. So this song is again inspired by the 70s hard rock sound, and something that you'll notice with that type of music is there's lots of layering of guitars. You can't get too many guitars in a track. Either they're doubling a guitar part, or they're doing a harmony line, either on a lead line or a signature line of the song. And that's kind of what I went for this vibe. I also then took this as a little bit of a challenge for myself, thinking maybe in the 70s they didn't have a gazillion pedals like we have now. And so what I did was I just tried to set my amp and use all my amp tone, no pedals, except I cheated one time where I did use a boost for the lead line. But for the most part, I just used the amp itself and just tried to get all the types of distorted sounds that I could out of it. And one thing to pick up on that I really noticed really quickly, I had to back the gain off quite a bit, because when you start to stack these guitar lines, that's really what makes it thicker and heavier. You don't need a lot of saturation, not a big distorted sound to get this big sound that you want for your guitar parts. And also I found a kind of a trick when you're layering the guitar parts and you're doubling them to use kind of octaves to your advantage. And I'll show you what I mean when I break down the guitar parts. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Rhythm guitar part 1 kind of sets the stage here, and we're basically going to play an A minor, an F, and a G power chord. I kind of view this song as kind of an A minor. So it basically starts off very simple with just 2 power hits. And then to the F, G, and it repeats. And then when we go into the next section of the song, it's those wonderful straight 8th notes that we're all kind of used to. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 to the G, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and F, 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 E minor. And it repeats. And this guitar part is double tracked. One with this guitar, and the other one with the Les Paul. And it goes back into those hits. And that's how it kind of ends the song. And like I was mentioning when I was playing there, I double tracked this with a Les Paul and this guitar. And I found that if you have the luxury of having 2 guitars, since they have a little bit of a different tonal signature in their frequency ranges, it really adds a lot to the thickness of the song. Even though I was using the same exact amp settings, the guitar pickups sounded a little bit different obviously when I was playing them. And that added a really nice texture on top of the existing guitar part line. Just again, having 2 guitars. Now if you don't have 2 guitars, what can you do? You can mess with your pickup selection. This is a little darker than this. So you can double track that. So have the one brighter sound on maybe the left side, and then go up to a more of a mellower sound, maybe on the opposite side, panning it hard right. And if that doesn't work, or if you need some more variation in your tone, go ahead and use your tone knobs on your guitar as well. So as I mentioned, that guitar part 1 was double track, but then I did do a triple track of this, but using octaves to my advantage. So here's our normal power chords that we're used to. And we're playing an A and an E. The root and the 5th. Well, I can have the root here and the 5th in the same spot to get a different type of flavor of a power chord. That's still a power chord, but it's kind of inverted where I have the 5th on top. But then what I did was I added the I added the octave of the 5th on top of this power chord shape. So basically I use my first finger to flatten down and play the E and the A on the A and the D string. And then I use my pinky, or you can use your third finger, to pick up that E, that octave there. And now you have a thicker sound. And this part I actually did on the Les Paul because it had a little bit more of a, I guess, a mid-range presence for me. And then when it went into that next guitar part where I was just basically playing the A, G to the F to the E minor, I basically just did octaves of those power chords. And I did a little bit of a lick here. So I just did a hammer-on from the open G to the A, hammer-on from the open D to the E, and a hammer-on from the open A to the B. Just outlining a little bit of that E minor chord, if you will. And it starts all over again, and of course I go right back into those power stabs. To end the song. And again, listen to my tone. It's not really until I dig in that it gets really more crunchier. Or crunchier, is that a word? I'm not sure. But anyway, you can hear it. It's not that muddy or distorted of a sound. Well, that was ugly with the extra note there. So those three guitar parts alone, the way that they're panned hard left and hard right, and the way that they're kind of played on the guitar, really make this nice rhythmic bed for the song. And of course, then I have the bass playing along with that, and I actually ran that through the same amp as well, which was kind of interesting. So now we get to the lead line, or the signature line of the song, I'm not sure, or the melody line, whatever we want to call it. It's basically playing something very simple here, just an A, to a C, to a B, to a G. And so it's just a very simple line, but it's very syncopated with the beats. And I'm kind of anticipating some of those hits, those beats, before the actual rhythm part gets there. And it adds a little bit of this kind of movement to your music, and that's something that you can consider doing with your own songs, is maybe having a line that's kind of anticipating the actual chord change before it happens. And so then up top, I'm doing a little bit of a harmony line, but I'm starting off with an A still. But then I'm going up to the E. And then to a C, B, A. And what's interesting about this guitar part, it kind of takes off and has this kind of linear line through the next section of the song. So it's going to go like this. And it's going to hang out in the A. It's going to outline the chord changes to the G. G to the F. F to the E. And it just repeats it again. So while that line is actually descending in pitch, the original line, the signature line, jumps up and plays this melody. So all that I'm playing here is a C, and I'm pulling off to the B, jumping up to an E, back to a B, to an A. So what I really like about this guitar part is two things. One, it's repetitive. It's something for the listener to grab onto. But, so it's not so boring. Because the chords are changing underneath it, this is the second reason I like this. The note values, or the flavor of the notes, change depending on the chord that's underneath it. So if I have the A, sounds a lot different than the G to the F. And then jump down to the G here for the E minor chord. But that's really something that you can play with. If you can find yourself a nice little signature line that fits over all of the chords in your chord progression, but adds a different flavor or mood every time that you play it, it really adds a little bit of a interesting kind of mysterious twist to your song, in my opinion. Because again, it's repetitive, but it doesn't sound very repetitive because the value of the notes seem to change with each chord change that you're playing underneath it. So you'll notice when the first section of the song comes back around with the power hits, that the signature line is nowhere to be found. And I did that for a reason. I wanted to give the listener a little bit of a break from hammering home all these melody lines that they were listening to, and just give them a little bit of just a musical break from that, and have something still interesting for them to pick up on. And that's where this next guitar part comes into play. So I went with a little bit of a softer sound, and I'm actually now finally giving a little bit more harmonic content. I'm playing the full A minor when those power chords hit, but I'm going to add a little bit of a note on top. So I'm going to play the A minor twice for the hits, and then I'm going to add this B. So it goes like this. To the F, G, A minor. So just that little bit of a break, again, from the whole lead line thing, but I also did something kind of interesting, I thought, with the mix. When I was going, the first is panned hard left, and then when I hit it again, when it comes around again, it's panned hard right, and then it kind of comes back to the center. So I was making this part dance a little bit in the mix for the listener between the left and the right speaker. So when that lead line is happening in the second section, there actually is another guitar part doubling that part, but an octave lower, playing it down here. It's the same notes. Even sliding back down to that G. And that adds just a little bit of a different energy to that higher guitar part. And then in between those lead lines, there was just a little bit of extra space for me to add a little bit of a bubble part. And what I mean by that is I played this. And that's happening over when you're going from the A minor to the G to the F to the E minor. So for the A minor, I did C, E, F, G, F, E. When it goes down to the G, I changed the first note to match a chord tone. So a G chord is made up of a G, B, D. So I'm going to start now that lick on the D, the fifth of that chord. But the top stays the same. And it's kind of palm muted, this part, just to hide a little bit in the mix, but add a little bit something extra, a little bit of ear candy for the listener to listen to. So what are some takeaways from this genre of music? Well, you can see here that the chord progression doesn't have to be all that complex. It's all about the energy. It's all about adding rhythmic hits, having parts, guitar lines, or even the rhythm parts doubled, maybe even triple track like I did in the first part, just to add a little bit of thickness and texture to your songs. And the final thing to take away is you don't have to play different notes all the time. Repetition is our friend. Establish some nice motifs for the listener to pick up on, and even maybe play those same melody lines over the different chords in the song just to see how the flavor of those change. Now, if you're interested in playing along with the tracks for this song, I'm going to leave them in the description for free for you to download. There's actually going to be 2 tracks. One is going to be the full band, so you can hear all the parts together. And the second track will just be the drums and the bass, so you can either play these lines that I made up or create your own lines over that same music. Have fun and enjoy some hard rock from the 70s.